It's an honor and a privilege for me to be asked to speak with you and share some thoughts and some insights around the idea of planning. And I'm going to share a couple of concepts for you today that will be new to you. And I'm also going to kind of help you see the bigger picture of why it matters and the role it's played in my life. And I know that you all are operating from the Process 2 book. And so I will say quickly that nothing in any book that I ever write is theory. Everything that I ever share is from my experience and my learning and what I've acted on in my life. So everything that's in that book, I do and have done for a long time. And so hopefully I share something today that's of value for you. I'm speaking much slower than I normally would because I know that this is going to be translated, which is work for me, but I'm happy to do it. So first I want to share a little bit really about my story as it relates to planning. My story as it relates to Lifeplus and in business in general is in many different places. And you don't need to hear that story today. But I do want to share a little bit about the impact that planning has made in my life because it's something that I teach all over this country, and I've taught all over the world. I am a freak about planning, and there's a reason for that. There are times when I hear people in my life say, some of the closest people to me, that they call me the most disciplined person they know, or that I'm incredibly good at using my time right. And I laugh a little bit when I hear this because I know the truth, right? I know me and I know my struggles and I know what's hard for me and what's not hard for me. And, for really not quite the first half of my life, as I'm older now, but mostly the first half of my life, I had very little to show for that. I had no results in anything of significance in any area of my life. And really the underlying reason for that is I had no discipline. I was not disciplined in any way, in any facet of my life. I was the least disciplined person that I know. And that's what someone would have called me at that point because I just went wherever the wind blew me, that's where I went. Wherever I felt, that's what I did, which isn't a good thing because back in those days, I totally I allowed my low opinion of myself and my anxieties and all of my excuses and all of my bad vibrations to dictate how I lived. And what's that going to get you? In my case, not very much. And so there were really, there's many disciplines that I've employed in my life since, of course, but there are 4 specific ones that made a massive difference because look, the journey of 1,000 miles is made up of many little steps. It's not about eating the whole elephant at once. It's about figuring out how to pull it down to one little bite at a time. And that's how everything works. And I'm a classic example that life is really about basics and fundamentals. And there aren't any new fundamentals in the world. There's lots of new tools, but there are no new fundamentals. No new fundamentals for building your business and new fundamentals for having a great life. It's always basics. And when you master basics, pretty interesting things start to happen. And so the disciplines sequentially that really changed my life, starting in my late 20s, which is why I can say now that wasn't half of my life, right? Because I'm 60 now, going on 61. And so the first discipline was exercise. That was the very first discipline that I incorporated. And that's because my body was changing as a young man. I couldn't get away with my lifestyle anymore. And so I started exercising for vanity. It wasn't for health. It's because I cared about how I looked. That's just the truth. and being real, because that's the only way I know how to be. But I started exercising every day, and the value of that was that it showed me I could commit to something and do it. Wow, that was a new revelation for me. And then the second discipline was reading. And then reading became development. And that, of course, is one of the cornerstones of, my life. And then, of course, in order to do those things, you have to figure out how to fit them in. Now, I didn't become a master planner until I almost lost everything. And literally, I almost lost my marriage. I was losing my health. Even though my very first business on my own was doing okay, I was miserable, unhappy. And it was because I was neglecting the things that mattered most. And that led to me undergoing an intense period of time. This is back in 1991, to uncover how to accomplish the things that mattered most, and not do it in a way that cost me other things that mattered. And so that's when planning started happening for me, and that's when I began seeing what planning was all about, and I studied it and started planning in a certain way and have perfected it over the years. So that discipline, because planning is a discipline, right? There's some people that say, I don't have time to plan, Todd, I got too much to do. Well, the reason you feel like you have too much to do is because you don't plan. You see, when you don't plan, you're highly inefficient. You give in to your feelings, you operate in reaction, you let your habits rule you. But when you begin to plan, and then the fourth discipline that helped me was the understanding to trust the process of the plan and let it play out and act on it. And so, very, very important point here. To me, planning is not an option if you want a good life. You have to have it. And I know that the focus of the book and the focus of the teaching in your session today is planning in your business. And obviously, that's one of the most important things you can do. Of course, you have to act on that plan. But when you come from the mindset that the plan is the actions and it's not an option to not do it, that's the game changer. And so the discipline of planning, and then the discipline of the steps in the process of the plan that related to all the parts of my life, including my business, that was the foundational game changer, right? I am not a super intelligent human being. I'm no more gifted or special or talented than anyone else. I'm just a regular guy. I have my own set of skills and abilities, just like you do. And through planning and executing a plan and acting on plans for development and plans for growth and plans for activity and plans for taking care of myself, over time, it's looked like that I have some extraordinary gifts, but I don't. It's just that's the result of acting on a plan, right? Because it's taking the little steps day in and day out and trusting the big picture. I posted this recently because it's one of my beliefs that when you do the right things consistently with the long term in mind, your short terms are pretty good. And that will be true in your business and in your life in general. And so planning was one of the primary disciplines that absolutely changed everything that happened in my life, because then I learned how to plan the right way. I learned how to plan inside of the things that were important to me. I learned how to plan in my work through experimenting. And then each day I created a plan and I acted on the plan. I didn't let anything get in the way of acting on the plan. And you might think, well, how do you do that, Todd? Because life gets in the way. Of course it does, right? We have relationships. We live in an interconnected world. We have all kinds of things that happen. And then there are times that things happen to us. I call that life happening. Something happens to you, right? Or a crisis occurs that you had no part in making happen, but it consumes you. Well, when you're a planner, you're operating in a different space in the way you are living your life. It's easier to deal with those things when they happen. And the other thing you'll find out is that the more you plan and operate within your plan, the less you do things to yourself that create crisis. And so I'm going to walk through a variety of things around this topic. You have the book, you're reading it and you're studying it, and some of you have been using it and working on it. I'll refer to it at the very end in that one space, but until you really grasp why it's so important and the big picture, no teaching matters, right? I mean, if someone is going to try to teach me something, I have to understand why it matters, because otherwise, why will I be interested, right? And so I got to give you a little bit more depth. I mean, certainly this discipline has changed my life massively, and I live an extraordinary life now. It's just the truth. It was hard, and I still have my own struggles, and I always will. That's part of the human experience. But man, when you plan it, it's not going to work out exactly how you plan. Remember that, right? That's the nature of life. But it's the general steps, right? When you plan the general steps, you will get to places that you're going to be really happy that you get to by operating it. So first biggest mistake that I see is, and I get a close-up view of this because, one, besides my Lifeplus business, and I'll show you how this progressed too, but I coach many people in the business world. I coach some CEOs, I coach senior level management, I coach entrepreneurs, and that part of my life has grown dramatically as people continue to get results and then they reach out to me. And I also train, there's several pretty significant companies that I train for. I'm the guy they call to come in and train their management teams. And it's very interesting because when I talk about planning and execution and time utilization, I don't use the word time management because I don't believe you can manage time. Time just goes on, doesn't care what you do or I do. It's really about task management and roles management and priorities management and focus management and attention management. That's what it's really about. And that comes down to planning. Planning is the key point to that. And one of the things I will ask in a session with these groups is, how many of you plan in your work? And most of them do because they have to. It's part of their culture, right? They're actually given some sets of plans. But most of them don't actually break it down the way I end up teaching them to make them more efficient in it. They're planning on a broader sense just in the job. And then I asked, this is the money question, how many of you plan outside of work? And almost no one. I mean, do people plan their holiday? Great, plan your holiday. So you plan 2 weeks a year or 4 weeks a year, depending on where you live. But think about that. If you don't plan your overall life, how's that going to relate to your work? Because the truth is, right, we are all emotional creatures having human experience. And if we're not planning our life, what's the result of not planning? A lot of disruption, a lot of crisis, a lot of problems that affect your work. And so that's the first thing I have to help them understand is if you are not planning your whole life, then it doesn't matter how well you plan your work because you're very rarely going to be fully there here. You cannot be fully present when you have so many problems going on. You need to have everything working relatively smoothly so that you can be focused. And so the first thing is you have to plan everything. And then your work is a part of that, right? That's the whole idea, the whole thing of work-life balance. That's not a real thing. There's no such thing. There's life balance. And work is part of life balance. And so, I have no idea if I'm going too fast or not, but I'll take a sip here, and that'll give us a break. So, think about it like this way. On this side, not happy. On this side, very happy, okay? So I know this is elementary. I'm an elementary guy. This is not planning. This is planning. When you don't plan, you live your life in reaction, meaning you feel out of control. It's been well documented through many thousands of psychological studies that a human being does not operate very well when we don't feel like we have any control. And so planning is a way you can control, right? You create a control and you can take action on things that matter to you. But the other side of reaction is, in many circumstances, we're reacting to results of not planning. Right? Much crisis in our life is self-inflicted. Most health crises are self-inflicted. Most crises in relationships are self-inflicted. Most crises in business are self-inflicted. Right? In pretty simple in Lifeplus, if we neglect to prospect long enough, we're going to have a problem because there's always some people coming, some people working, some people leaving. That's the way it's always going to be. And so if we stop putting people in the front of it, if we stop prospecting, that's neglect. Eventually, we will react to the problem of not having enough points for qualification or not having enough activity going on, and we'll feel bad and we'll create a negative cycle. That's just normal. That's just reality, right? So when we don't plan, we have crisis and we have neglect, right? Neglect is, boy, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. And that leads to regret, which is even worse. It's also no control. It's stress. You have a lot of stress in this area. You have burnout. You have anxiety. You have putting out fires, right? That's what no planning leads to. Now, I want you to think about that. Think about how you feel when you're having problems. Do you feel happy? Do you feel engaged? Do you feel energized? Do you feel like talking to a prospect? Do you feel like encouraging your team? No. And you know what? You're building your Lifeplus business requires emotional energy. It doesn't actually require that much physical energy. It's emotional energy. And in order to have emotional energy, you need to have clarity. You need to have some peace. You need to have a sense of well-being, right? That comes from operating in this side of the equation. This side, the happy face, is the proactive side. People who function proactively are ahead of the game. You know, I can tell you, and this is just the way it is for me, I never have stress about time. Never. It's not a thing for me. And it hasn't been for many years because I live proactively. I plan everything in all the areas that matter in my life. And as a result, I'm always way ahead. I mean, just right now, when Walter asked me to do this, I'm in the middle of a very busy season in many regards. Very busy in my personal life. There's a lot of things going on in my personal life. And business-wise, I have several events for companies that I'm the event. And so that takes an enormous amount of preparation. And yet, I don't have any stress around that because I'm operating so far ahead because I function by planning and proactivity. And that's not even counting my Lifeplus work and my coaching work and everything else, and my house and the rest of the things that make up a life, right? So when you are being purposeful in the proactive area, this is where the discipline comes in, right? Because what it leads to is joy, and it leads to peace, it leads to the ability to focus, right? It leads to growth and credibility and all these things that are attractive, freedom and efficiency, and so you have all these wonderful things that are outcroppings of this. And the other part of this is when someone is operating proactively, and some of you have seen me draw this before, and I don't have time to try to figure out what the German words are, but you have your competence, you have your character, and then the result of this is your credibility, right? And so someone who operates proactively by planning and then acting inside of the things that matter most in their life, the way they are seen by others just increases because the natural results of what you are doing are evident, right? People say, wow, that person has it together. Whatever that person's doing, I should find out. That's what you want, right? You can't walk into a room and say, you should listen to me. You need to be able to walk into a room and have people go, I'd like to listen to you. That's entirely different. That comes from what you're doing. That comes from who you're being, and that comes from living in a proactive way. Okay, so that's a little around how planning impacts you, right? So when you are a planner, here's the reality. I rarely, if ever, I can't remember the last time I ever had to say the words, I forgot. I can't remember. I just never have to say those words. I forgot. I never think to myself, what should I do next? Ever. I never do. Unless it's a Sunday. The only day I don't plan is a Sunday. All right? So, by the way, I use an old-fashioned planner. I know that this is archaic for some of you, right? I am a dinosaur. I'm okay with that. I enjoy being a dinosaur. But everything I ever do is planned in here. Everything. And then I have a living Bible of my efforts. I also keep a journal. And those two things, everything's in it. Everything's in it all the time. And so I'm never thinking about what should I do next. I solve that problem before I even start in the morning. I never begin a day without planning it. I'm not a great planner for a 10-year horizon, because what I've learned and the way I think is that if I plan excellently inside of a day and a week and a month, the end result will take care of itself. And it has, right? Just by fun. So I plan every day but Sunday. There isn't a day. Saturday, my plan's a little bit looser, right? Because I'm not beholden to typically I don't have commitments related to others. But Monday through Friday, my days are incredibly planned. And, you know, when I stop, I stop. Why? Because I don't have to think about it. I don't have to carry it with me. And so it's important to recognize. So you need to have one central way of planning, and everything is in there, your whole life. You plan your whole life. That allows you to take advantage of all the efficiencies, and it also creates the ability to focus. Because when you are operating proactively and you are ahead of things, you're not worried about what could be going wrong or about the thing that is going wrong, because most of the time, when you operate proactively and you plan and act on those plans going forward, you don't have as many things go wrong. You're not behind on things. You're not in crisis in things. You're not putting out fires. You're not trying to catch up. You don't have any of that. And so you're operating, and I almost look like I'm methodical. And anyone who knows me knows that I'm not methodical in here. My brain's gone all over the place. But I'm operating on my plan. I'm executing the process. So I want to show you a little concept here that's very, very important, that I really just started teaching to my clients maybe a year ago. But it's very, very valuable on this topic. See, most people get very focused on their goal, and you should, right? Your goal is very, very important. But they put the goal as the thing at the top. That's the thing you're going after. And you should, but actually every day, while you should be aware of what you're trying to accomplish, that's not the most important thing. The most important thing every day are the steps that go into the goal, right? It's action versus result. The action's what matters. If you're just focused on the result but not focused on the action, you're never going to get to the result, because usually it looks so far away, you feel like you're never getting there. Right? Whereas opposed to taking the action, if I'm walking 1,000 meters or 1,000 kilometers, and I take 20 steps today, well, those 20 steps matter. But in terms of looking at the 1,000 kilometers, I don't feel like I went anywhere. But if I focus on the fact that I did 20 steps, I can feel good about that. I can recognize my discipline. I can recognize my progress. And then I can say, I can do that again, and I can do that again, and I can do that again, and I can do that again. Right, I know I might be speeding up a little bit, but so what I'm about to show you can be a game changer for you if you take the time to really think it through. So I already mentioned that goals are super important, as are plans, but we have to have them in the right order. So this is, I call it the productivity pyramid, for lack of a better word. So on this bottom layer are your values, your principles, and your beliefs. Okay? Your values, your principles, and your beliefs. They are the foundation of everything you do. Important to recognize this, because whether you take the time to think about what they are or not, you are acting on these. And one of the biggest ones here is the belief, because unfortunately many of our beliefs are false, especially about ourselves, and we have to really work on ourselves to uncover that. We don't have time to talk about that, but very, very important to get clear about that. You know, If I gave in to my false beliefs, I certainly wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't have become a speaker and a trainer, not with my introversion and my fears, no way, not with my anxiety, not with my, coming from nothing and not thinking I am anything, right? How's that going to happen? That's all false belief stuff. So values, principles, and beliefs, they are the foundation in which everything you do operates, okay? So from there, the next step is your priorities. So your values, your principles, and your beliefs drive your priorities, all right? And they have to. They have to, because the next layer up are your goals. Your goals have to be driven by your priorities. If they are not, you won't do them, or you won't care about them, or more importantly, you will victimize some set of what's important to you while you pursue that goal because you didn't have clarity on what mattered most. Because your goals have to be in all your priorities, right? All your priorities have to have goals. And so your values, principles, and beliefs drive your priorities. Your priorities drive your goals. As you get farther down the road and develop more, become more of who you're supposed to be, and begin to actualize and become more confident and become stronger, then your goals shift to your purpose. Purpose is the gravy. Once you're operating in purpose, man, that's a sweet place in life. That's where you're making your greatest contribution, where you feel the best in doing it, and you're reaping the fruit. But it takes time to get to that. So you can see right now, goals, right, are driven by these things. If we set a goal without knowing these things, we're wasting our time. We're never going to go after it. This is how the why actually forms, is right through here. The next thing on top of this, of the goals, is your actions or tasks that lead to it, right? So in our work, what are those actions? There are the approach, the follow-up, or the information, the follow-up, serving, right? The process. The process are the tasks, right? So the goals drive that. They drive the amount. If your goal is just to make a couple €100, then your tasks and activities and the level of them is going to look a whole lot different than the person that says, I want to build the business full-time and I want to be able to then change my entire life and the way I operate, etc. Right? That's just, it's very logical. It's not given to feelings. And then on top of this is the plan. This is the process of how this works. So first you have to build it going this direction. You've got to build it based on your beliefs, your values, and your principles, because that's the playing field. I'm contacted constantly for different things, right? Whether it's causes in the community or opportunities to use my skills, or whether it's investment opportunities or business opportunities, whatever, right? And all I do is go right here. Does it fit into my overarching values, beliefs, and principles? Does it fit into my purpose and my priorities? Because I'm at the stage where I'm operating completely in purpose, right? And my priorities have already gotten to there. So I can almost go right to here. But it comes through here, and then it's easy for me to go, no, maybe, no. Right? That's easy. I don't have to think about it because it's mapped. Right? So everything funnels through this. So you create that plan. Right, that plan gets created based on the goals, but the goal has to come before the plan, because then you go backwards and say, okay, now we know what we want to do, and so here's how many of these we do to try to get to this. That's how that all fits together, and that's a very powerful formula for you. So now I'm going to take you to another piece. How am I doing on time here? Okay. Because I talked about priorities, and I have to give you this part of the plan, or I would be shortcutting you, right? So those who've seen me speak before, you have seen me talk about the 3 circles, right? Where you have your health and your relationships and money. We call it money, call it career, whatever you want. And so these priorities in this order, this is what I teach. And the reason I teach is because it's how I operate. And it's how I build my life, and it's how everybody who I coach and mentor who operates with this methodology, their life gets substantially better faster, right? Because I've seen plenty of people, both in our business and in all kinds of other businesses, who put this priority first. And it didn't work out for them. Even if they made money, the price of the money was too much. Whereas you can make more, or you find out really what you care about by this philosophy. Now, in the health circle, of course, you have two parts. You have the physical part and the mental part. The mental part is the development, right? That's where you work on your skills. So part of your plan every day has to be working on yourself and your skills, because that gives you confidence. Competence equals confidence. Wherever you are not confident, it's because you're not competent, or you don't believe you're competent. It's very, very simple. And so that's part, you have to plan that in every day. The first thing in my planner is working on me. That's number one. I do this circle first. So you see it in my planner every day, that my exercise, my prayer, my quiet time, my personal development, my journaling, my affirmations and affirmations, they come before anything else except taking out my dogs. I gotta take them out first. And so that comes first. Why? Because I'm building this circle so that I can be more effective in this circle, which makes me more effective in this circle. Now, one thing to recognize about this circle, I really just focus on the love relationship, the deep one, because I know that to be upset in that circle will destroy your business. It will destroy your career, right? It just does. And all you have to do is, well, unfortunately, some of you know. Some of you have had that experience, or you've seen someone close to you have that experience. But there's an extension to this circle that I teach in broader terms to companies, is that your relationships go into 4 categories, very simply. You have your love, right, which is your close family or your love interests. Then you have your friendships, and then you have your community relationships, and then you have your business relationships. And now typically that would be around your business relationships outside of Lifeplus, because for many people, most people, when this money circle is their career and Lifeplus, right? It's 2 things for a while, okay? Very important to understand that when you do this properly, not only are you taking care of this relationship, but that spills over into all these relationships. And all of these relationships are what drive that circle. That's why you have to get it right. But the only way to get it right is to plan it. Otherwise, what happens if you don't plan? Well, you know the old adage, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? And my other adage, which is in the book, is if you don't have a plan, somebody has a plan for you. Your life simply has too many distractions, too many things coming at you, too many people pulling at you, too many voices screaming at you, so that if you don't have a plan that you stick to, you're just gonna be everywhere. And you get to the end of the day and you go, what did I do? I never worked in my business. I didn't work on me either. I don't know what I did. I did stuff. That's reaction. You can't live in reaction. But if you live in reaction, you're not going to live your life. You're going to live everybody else's life for you. You have to live your life. If for no other reason, then that's what you're here for. And that's the best way to help other people, is to model for them what it looks like. Because then you have people coming to you. I have people come to me all the time and say, how do you do it? And this is it. It's not hard, but it's all planned. This is just a quick little note. So the 3 circles typically starts as health and your love relationship and your career, which starts as Lifeplus and your job at the same time for most people. But as you figure this out and you operate in your plan, the way it looks eventually is you got your health, you got your love relationship, and then this circle becomes Lifeplus, because eventually you don't need the job, but then you're still going to have another circle, right? And that circle is going to be your heart pursuits, whatever that is. Isn't that a thing of beauty? then, so it's like your cause, right? Many of you, foundation pursuits or nonprofit work, or maybe it's writing a book, or you know what? That's the beautiful thing about our business. It can be the thing. Maybe your goal is to be the top diamond in the company. I applaud you and I'll cheer you all the way. But for most people, that's not what it is. Most people that they begin to understand that their life can be what they want it to be. And so Lifeplus becomes the primary circle here, but it helps to launch them into the things that matter most to them. Lifeplus part of it. So for me, right, I teach the 3 circles, and I teach development because my purpose, my goal, I mean, it's my purpose is to help people to live the richest life possible. Not richest as in money, although that could be part of it, but I mean to be their best self, living their best way, to be the most developed that they can, living with joy so that they can then use that to make the unique contribution that only they can make. There's no one else in the world that can make the contribution that you can make. And you might think, I'm just one person. That's right, so am I. We're all just one person. But we're all supposed to do what we're uniquely here to do, to fit together perfectly to make this world a better place. That is my true belief. It's how I operate every day of my life. It's why I still do what I do every day of my life. And so that's how this ends up looking, right? And eventually it can look like this. And this is how it looks for me. The purpose. It's health, relationship, purpose. And then my purpose curves is my Lifeplus business and my coaching, which is all mixed together because it's all my purpose to help people do better. So obviously Lifeplus is right there. It's part of that conversation all the time. It all fits together. Got to have your health. Got to have great relationships, got to have great community, got to be developing yourself, all that works together. And so the only way to make that happen is through planning. So when you plan every day, you got to plan you in the plan, you got to plan the people you care into the plan, and then you plan your work. And so the way the work looks is very simple to me. And again, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I figured out how to make things into a process, and then I just work the process. I just take the steps, and I take the steps, and I take the steps. And I went from being a terrible, terrible person talking on the phone, awful, to becoming not so bad. And then after a while, I was okay at it. And then after a while, I got pretty good at it. And then over time, I became a master at the telephone. Why? Because I just approach, information, follow up, serve. Right? I just did it over and over and over and over and over because I planned it that way, right? And so here you have your new contacts and you have your not yets, and how that changes, how you get from a new contact to a not yet is when a decision is made. When Mary says to me, I don't think I want to try the products right now, or I don't think it's for me right now. Okay, now you're a not yet. Until you're a not yet, you are in my new folder. That's how it works. And then over here, of course, is you're missing in action. Maybe Mary did decide to use the products, and after 2 months she disappeared. That happens to everybody, right? Or she decided to get involved and then she disappeared. She goes into my missing in action folder. That's okay because everyone stays in the process, even if they're not active right now. And then over here, of course, are your partners. Customer partners, business partners, right? So this process, which we work continuously, is built around these folders. And it's all planned. Everything is planned. And by the way, I just have to address this. And I remember many years ago when I was trying to teach my son about planning, before he cared, before he wanted to learn it, which is pretty normal, right? You try to teach your kids something, they're like, leave me alone. So, and he's like, Dad, I don't want to be, planning everything. Then I can't be spontaneous. I can't be free. Oh, that's such a mistake because the opposite is true. You see, spontaneity, being spontaneous, being able to just do something because you want to, you can only really do that when you have everything under control. when you have everything you can control under control, when you're on top of your work, when you're ahead of the game. And so I have incredible amounts of spontaneity in my life, and I have for years. And the reason is because I plan. I plan so well that my health is always taken care of. My relationships are always taken care of. I'm giving and investing in the things that matter. My business, I'm always on top of the things in my business. So that if someone says, hey, you want to go to a ball game tonight? I can look at my schedule and go, yep, I'm going. So you can be more spontaneous in life. You have more freedom, and you have so much more emotional freedom when you operate. And so, in the book, I share a very basic formula that works. If you're operating on a short amount of time in your day, you got to use that to the highest level of efficiency. And we're so much, your ability to be so much more efficient in today's world, like prospecting is so much easier now than it used to be. Yes, people don't answer the phone as much, but you can drop a message faster. And so you learn to integrate things like voice drops in messaging to speed up the prospecting process. I mean, last year when we introduced, or the year before, last year, we introduced Ketonic, and I worked that product like an hour a day for, I don't know, a couple months, and put 40 or 50 people on it just by doing exactly what I said. I just got up and said, okay, I'm going to do 10 or 12 or 14 of these and then see what comes from it. So first thing you do is your new contacts, always. And until you reach a place in your business where it doesn't matter anymore, right? But until you're at that place, every day, work on yourself, put that in there first, and then work on your new contacts. Now, the reason you work on yourself and your relationship first is because now you already have all that matters most in life covered. And so you're not operating in any area out of need. You don't come to a prospect out of need. You come to a prospect out of being able to serve. You can't serve when you're focused on yourself. You got to be able to be focused on them. Hey, are you open to learning? So I can help you with something here. And so your new prospects first, and then the next place that you're going to go is your follow-ups. And what might change that equation is if you've got a customer who's reached out to you, or one of your prospects has reached out to you and said, hey, I want to talk to you right away. I mean, of course you want to go serve that person. But otherwise, in general, new contacts first. You're tempted to do follow-ups first. Why? Because they feel a little bit better, right? Especially follow-ups who have expressed interest. But you got to do this first, and it allows you to operate out of an abundance mentality. See, if I've got 100 or 200 or 300 people in my pipeline who have expressed some measure of interest in learning, I am not worried about someone saying no to me. I am not worried if someone doesn't call me back. Why? Because I have so many people to talk to. That's how you operate. You do it, when I first started, my first month, I talked to almost 750 to 800 people. Most of those people said no to me, but 100 said yes. That's how I had such a fast start. It wasn't because I was Superman. It's because I worked the process full time, right? You pull that back and work it in your time frame. It's just mathematics with heart. That's what this business is. Mathematics with heart. But you have to plan properly in your whole life to give you the emotional freedom plus the emotional strength to then shift into your work, and then you just plan your work and work your plan and trust the process. And over time, you get the fruit.